Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me. This is the Tell It Like It Is podcast, and I'm your host, Alexi Bailey. And today I have a very special guest, Ashwin.
Hi,
Hi, Ashwin. Thank you for joining us.
thanks for having me. See?
Oh my gosh, this moment, like getting to this moment, is like the hard part, and then I'm like, we can relax. Yeah, man. Thanks for taking the time. Like I said, it's all good vibes. Did you see any of the previous episodes?
I saw one, I don't remember her name, but you were interviewing someone over Zoom about Princeton life and stuff.
Yeah, that was Beth. Beth is like the go-to interview that I show to people. It was like smooth. She just was like so like, it's like an art. I haven't like got it down to a science yet, but it's just about conversation, man. Where were you born?
I was born in India. I lived in India for what, 20 years of my life before I moved to the States.
Where in India?
It's a fairly large city in the south called Chennai. It's by the coast. It's like way down south. It's a big city, so
Does it get cold there? Because you
No,
said it's pretty
no.
south.
No, it's like south of the Tropic of forget the name, but north of the equator. It's about the same as Mexico, so it's very
Still hot.
hot, tropical.
India's hot for sure.
Most of it, yeah, is tropical.
Yeah, man. So prior to moving to Princeton, I moved here in 2016, right? I lived
Where
in
did you? Oh, yeah.
I lived in Manhattan. I'm originally Jamaican,
Okay.
right? So as a Jamaican, I moved here when I was 13. Lived in Florida for a couple of years, and then when I was 15, I moved to New York City, Queens. Did Queens for 3 years. Went to college in Long Island for 4 years, and then I moved to Manhattan with Darlene.
It's cool.
Yeah, so from '03 to 2016, I was in Manhattan and Upper West Side, basically, and a little bit of Washington Heights. Um, I think the interesting thing that I was going to bring up was that, like, I didn't know a lot of Indian people in when I lived in Manhattan or Queens, and
Really?
obviously they were there,
Oh,
but
okay.
I didn't know them. Right. So when I moved to Princeton in 2016, I think we were just more in proximity and just, being older, more mature.
Mhm.
The connection was just happening more. So I'm very much fascinated by diversity, other people, and understanding the complexities that that is humanity. But I always point out how similar people are. And saying I didn't know Indian people is like not even true because there's so many Indians in Jamaica.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true.
And, I think they pretty much brought curry to the Caribbean,
Yeah.
right?
And that came, as part of the old trade. That there were a lot of, in South Africa and in West Indies, Jamaica,
Mhm.
all these places, there was some influx of Indian population. I mean, I always see it as a good thing, not the trade, but like you say, diversity, and comes through. Food is just one of the ways that it comes through, but there's a lot of other ways that it comes through, like art, culture, music, dance. So.
Every culture has contributed to the human diaspora in many ways, for sure, for sure. Indian is no exception. India just is like a special place in my mind because it's like a continent and it still was able to maintain its identity as one country,
Mhm.
which is like a big thing.
Yeah, there's sort of micro diversity that different regions of India have their own language. You don't see that in the US. I mean, certainly there's sort of accents in different parts of the US, and there's sort of different micro cultures. And when they meet, obviously amazing things happen, but in India, there's still different languages, even different written script per state. Like you cross state lines, it's a different language. Like even on the bus, you might not be able to read the sign on the bus if you don't know the language and you cross state lines.
Oh wow.
So there's a lot more what I call micro diversity. It's just sort of everyone is the same sort of racial ethnicity, but there's diversity in other ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm such a student of culture, and to hear about South Indian versus North Indian, and all of these things, and the city people, and the people in the country, and life is very diverse, even in a 50-mile radius. Even in what we would think of as homogeneous places.
It's hard to take something from culture and then exactly map it back to where it came from, or what contribution come from where, right? It's sort of just happens organically, and I don't think you can even map it backwards like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a different kind of diversity than what I'm enjoying here, which is more sort of worldwide diversity. It's nice. You get more broader opinions, different perspectives on life. That certainly improves life as such.
Yeah. I mean, there's a million things we could talk about. I'll just let you know that the podcast is a chance for people to meet each other. Like we have the guys meet up on Sunday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just to connect people and to have a real community, and just to give each other a chance to just get an introduction. I think most people are good at meeting people where they're at. I've just always been interested in history and understanding how the complex history affects everything today. Like in India, pretty much everyone speaks English or has some exposure to English, right? And I didn't really understand that for a long time. And then I started to understand like the English people had like a major colonization. How do you call it?
Yeah, it is a colonization. Before that, there were multiple, colonizers, from the Shahs and the Mughals, and then before that. So I mean, there's always been sort of influx and melting pot situation. But now there are things that do not have a word in our language. Our language is very old, right? And pretty much all the older languages, there isn't a word for something like internet or Facebook. You use the English word. Right. And so it's just a way of familiarizing yourself with the new language, and then soon enough, everyone knows some English.
Yeah. But did you learn English in school, or?
Yeah, actually, my education was English medium. So English was the first language, and all my own culture I learned at home, and my roots and stuff I learned at home. I learned my mother tongue language from my parents and grandparents, talking to them, reading bus signs and stuff like that. But most of my schooling was English, math and science and that kind of thing.
What's your mother tongue language?
It's called Tamil.
Yeah.
It's a very old language, probably one of the oldest languages known to man.
Are you very proud of that? Like speaking Tamil, and you meet other people and you like Tamil, and it's like, yeah.
Definitely. I try to put in at least a word sideways in the language if I meet someone who knows the language. But I'm definitely proud of that. I'm not as proud of the fact that I'm not as good at it as I could be.
Sure.
But that's because of the education and stuff. Like I never read the classical texts that are in my language, sort of like the you can take any classical text, even stories, right? Kids stories and stuff, that I was more exposed to sort of other language or other cultures' classical text rather than my own.
Right.
But this is something I learned later, and I kind of actively try to go back and find my roots.
Yeah, there's no end to learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get more and more grounded. I think as an African American, there's been so much of, like you said, it's one of the oldest languages. Like we lost a lot of our languages and those, older culture things from a long time ago. I'm very much a person who's focused on like the good old days and those kinds of things that that root us in history, that root us in identity and those things. And America is a beautiful place to sit here and talk about the different places in the world that people have been and their experiences.
I think every person should, at some point in their life, go on a route finding journey that you just sort of dig into the internet or go to libraries, go back to where you came from and try to do some local talking, searching.
Right.
It's very satisfying.
Sure. So are you a Tamil Indian? Is that the title?
I mean, usually it's say Indian.
But I mean, like, how would what is the Tamil group name?
Oh, they might say Tamilian.
Tamilian, okay.
As people who speak that language. But like I said, every state has its own language. So
right, that's what I mean. Like
right.
That Tamilian group, like yeah. Right. So are they common to South?
Yeah. No, it's literally the state lines coincide with linguistic lines and like script lines and things like that.
So what are some of the Tamilian characteristics?
Oh, I don't know if I can answer that.
But I mean,
it's a difficult question.
Would you? Yeah, like what have you observed so far?
Oh, we all like seafood a lot.
Yeah,
because we're kind of near the coast,
right?
Although nowadays I'm vegetarian, a lot of people now are vegetarians. Most Tamilians I've met like seafood.
Right.
It's hard to say. I mean, it seems like
is
food.
Your wife Tamilian also?
Yes, she's from the same city.
When did you guys meet?
We met in a nearby city, not in the same city.
Okay.
When I was in college, I went to college with her cousin, so we were kind of best buddies. And one day we just met. So we were like, yeah.
And you said you came here when you were 20.
I was 22. I want to say.
So you already knew her.
I knew her before I came here. Yeah.
Got it.
And then she came like the following year with me. So I was living in Oregon, and I bring that up because diversity in Oregon is pretty much localized to Portland, which is like the only big city there. And it's very different where you go in Oregon based on where you are in Oregon. You see different diversity or no diversity at all. In many cases, no diversity at all. So it was an interesting experience going from that to New Jersey, where we have so much diversity and access to so many things that are sort of local to us. And I'm not just talking about food, but even like I want to buy this one weird thing that I can only buy. I remember buying as a child. I can buy it in New Jersey.
What is it?
Well, I'm just
right.
Well, if I was to give an example, it could be like this sugarcane juice.
Okay.
Right. We have a lot of sugarcane in the farms, and a favorite thing for kids to do is just break off a piece and chew on it for like the whole day, like peel off the bark and just chew on it the whole day. It's sugar. It's not healthy, but
no, come on, sugarcane's healthy. Yeah, you go to Jamaica. If you ask me, sugarcane's like one of our things for sure.
Yeah. But in Oregon, you would be hard pressed to find it.
Right. How long were you in Oregon?
I was there for my grad school, which felt like forever, but I was there for 7 years.
Oh yeah, that is a long time. 7 years in your 20s is like, you're still finding yourself, and then to just be yanked out of everything you know in a non-diverse place, it's like, well, that's tough. What did you study?
I got my PhD in computer science, which is what I do here in New Jersey. But no, what you said has a very important thing there, that when you get yanked out like that, people typically talk, and there are many books written about this, about culture shock and adjustment. But the main thing they don't, or they fail to mention, is that you kind of, you're far away from your family. You can't just like drive up to your family and meet them, or meet at major holidays. So that's kind of the certainly technology helps with that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I think for me, there's been a certain duality to my experience, and I'm sure a lot of us too. So for me, when I came here and I experienced all of these shock, I just started recreating myself. I was 13, so I was younger, so I was still kind of formative and trying to fit in. So it was a shock, but it was tough for sure. I don't know, but I think it assimilated more to me. Florida, those 8th and 9th grade and those kinds of things. And yeah.
Right. It makes the later on sort of search for your roots that much more rewarding, that you assimilated so many things in yourself, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's not like a prototype Jamaican person. Everyone there's an infinitesimal a continuum of personalities that everyone sort of pick and choose the best parts that they like of different cultures, and that's totally that's the point. So,
yeah.
What works for you might be the best for you.
Yeah. When I was in Florida, I had my dad was already there, so he had his family there. There's Caribbean culture there. Like I still had that on weekends, and it's funny because when I moved to Florida, my uncle had reggae records. So growing up, I never had reggae records. We had the radio, but it wasn't a thing. So in some ways, like my connection to the culture deepened just with these few records that I really never got to listen, or I wasn't able to listen to it when I wanted to on demand.
So you made a connection.
Exactly.
And I mean, it makes sense. Here in Florida, they might have, like you said, not have as much reggae on the radio. So the only way to listen to reggae is enshrine it, record, and play it when you. So you said you lived in Florida, then you went to college in Long Island and Queens. So that's also a sort of a shift.
Yeah. I think Florida for me was like, Florida was more like a narrower culture, and in New York City it was much broader. I don't even know any other words right now, but so it was just easier to just be whatever I was in New York. Whereas in Florida, it was like, all right, this is what people are. It was more narrow. So when I got to New York, it was just like, oh, yeah, I'm a Jamaican American now. And it was just, and I think when I was in Florida, it was more like, well, where do I fit kind of more. So it was easier when I got to New York. And I've always gravitated to like an African American more than a Caribbean American. So it was easier for me to just assimilate into African American. Whereas I think the African American in Florida is more of a smaller niche, more complicated to figure out.
Certainly, there's the need to sort of have a sense of belonging in a community. And if there's like not much of a community, you naturally find a bigger community. end of the day, you're going to have like a million things to say, right? It's not just African American, Jamaican, Indian. That list just goes on and changes based on where you are in life and where you are at the moment. You might feel differently if you are in a different place. That's what I mean by the pick and choose of the thing. You tend to pick and choose.
Right, right, for sure, for sure. Were there arranged marriages in your town?
Yeah, mine was not because I knew her.
You met,
we were dating for a couple of years before. So, but no, I mean it's not really. Yeah, I don't know if arranged marriage makes
I know it's
justice
like
to
a
the
family.
what
A
happens.
family knows a family, and
Yeah, it's more
Setup.
like yeah, there is a they take some of the initial steps of setup, but then it's pretty much um, dating, but in a sort of um, it's not a free for all kind of dating. It's more of a chaperoning system to some sense.
how? So is this like years in advance?
Sometimes it takes years. Like I've known people who were engaged for many years, even within this arranged marriage system. And they just said, kept saying, "Oh, we'd like to get to know each other more," and that's acceptable.
Right.
It's not, well, I'm talking about, special cases, and these can happen. There are also special cases that someone just pulls the plug and that's it. You don't have a say in it. That can happen too,
Yeah.
especially in the like rural parts.
And sometimes it's like, you let your kid figure things out, and then like when it starts to get late, you kind of get involved, right? I've heard of that too, right?
You might want to, nudge a little bit. I mean, if they genuinely don't like it, the hope is you can back out of it in most cases. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm really interested in that because I think disproportionately those marriages last, right?
Yeah, definitely, that's true. Divorce is very, very uncommon, uh, partially because of this, like detailed background search and stuff that happens in the beginning. That's basically what it is. The families are sort of scoping out each other, saying, okay, well, is your, is he an alcoholic or is he a drug addict? Stuff like that. Stuff you hear in the dating world. You basically, that's your job to find out all those things. But another reason divorce is not common could just be sort of the taboo of it, and the whole family got involved at some point. So there's some taboo that you're breaking up something bigger than yourself.
Right.
While that is obviously not true, obviously your happiness matters. That's, it's kind of like the Irish Catholic marriages. They tend to stay longer because it's so taboo.
So basically, I mean, because I know every part is different, right? The culture is different. So basically, at some point, it's a family that was on your radar long before all of this, right? And you're like, oh, that family has a daughter and I have a son. And it's like, they have a good high standing, moral standing that matches ours. And she's around the same age.
Yeah, well, it doesn't quite happen that early. It's sort of a intentional step that, I mean, almost no one would, as far as I've heard, it's not like it's already a family that it's very rare. They actually go out and find, now, especially with online, just like online dating, there's online, like so many matrimony websites where essentially you make a profile.
So conventional Indian families are doing this online?
For every possible grouping of people that you can imagine, like Tamilians or Indians or Indians abroad, just like farmerstate.com, similar to that. Yeah, this is now the most common way of doing this process is kind of make a profile, see who you meet, but it's the families doing all this initial legwork.
Yeah. Is the pressure more on girls or the guys' family?
I feel like that's changing, fortunately. It used to be more, pressure was more on the girls, certainly, and just like any other society. Unfortunate though it is. But I'm glad that it's changing now. It seems to be more of even footing. And again, online has a huge, huge role in that. So
Right.
it's even footing for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to stay on it too long, but so basically, it again, like I know so many Indian people, and they're like, yeah, our families met each other. They made this arrangement, and some of them meet on the wedding day.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, I'm not saying today, I don't know, but I met couples who've been together for 20 years who tell me stories like, it's a thing. And it's like, my mom called their dad and they arranged, you've heard of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really the interesting thing for me is that it's just a different way of doing things. And like I said, the marriages, they click and they work. And, I think there's just different ways of doing the same thing. And
It's a bit of rolling the dice
Right.
like that. If you want to pick and choose, right? I mean, there's good things about this system also
Right.
that you can, it's a difficult thing. First, we have to just fess up that dating, marriage, falling in love, these are like stressful, anxiety-inducing, difficult things. And so having your family support to go through something like that is good. You don't, what happens in typical dating here, you're just kind of thrown out there and you figure it out.
Yeah.
And along the way, you might have some pretty bad experiences, traumatizing experiences, right? So the family kind of helps you go through that and help you separate what's good and what's just giving you anxiety. But the bad thing is like what you said, you just meet them on the day of the wedding. That's not okay. That kind of thing.
So that we're moving away from that pretty much, you're saying.
Yeah. I don't
Okay.
think that's gonna stand long, but it varies. I'm a city boy, so I kind of only know what's happening in my circles. And the more rural you go, where education is harder
Right.
or less
Right,
accessible,
right.
then it's more difficult.
Yeah.
Continue to follow old practices.
So I'm a huge fan of Indian culture. I love the music, the food. Like I wish I knew more of the language. I want to watch some Bollywood stuff. When we were at Columbia, there were so many Bollywood groups, university. There were so many Bollywood groups, and they would do these shows that were like Broadway level, and the kids were like coming up with these stuff on their own. I love the clothes. I love everything. I really do. I have a huge appreciation, and like I said, I've been blessed to have Indian friends who are so like nice and open and these kinds of things.
Everyone brings something to the community. So.
What do you do in computer science?
Right now, I do artificial intelligence. Basically, what I do is it's kind of a mix of data science where there's a lot of data, but to things that don't actually have established techniques, and how do we get machines to learn and end of the day automate some of the difficult things that humans have to do, and they might not be actually very good at it, frankly. There are certainly those things.
Are you doing very specific? Are you doing general artificial intelligence?
It's mostly general, like open problems, research questions that can help across the board.
Yeah. So it's research based.
Yes.
Got you.
Yeah.
I mean, I try to be smart. Yeah, I try to be. Artificial intelligence like one of the hottest things on the planet. I find it interesting that companies like Tesla, when they sell you their product, they get to keep the data, and that's what's really valuable. So it's kind of like, just like how when we use Instagram and when we use YouTube, like what we put on there is valuable. And at least on some level, if you monetize what you're doing, you should be able to get some of that money back. Like,
Yeah.
And when you're giving your data back to a company like Tesla and Google, like they're literally making money from your experience with this
Absolutely.
product.
Absolutely. You're driving the car, you're giving them, you're driving it for them. Yeah, I mean, before the AI hype, I mean, AI tends to be hyped up more in the media nowadays, but big data was sort of the underlying revolution that um, now we have access to vast amounts of data, and also now we have better computers that are capable of churning through that data effectively. For a human to go through all that data would take many lifetimes, but a computer can do it in a few days.
Right.
So now the power of the computers and cloud computing has come to a point where they can do it. So essentially now we throw data at, you have a problem, we collect data about the problem, throw it at the computer, let it figure out the solution, because it's able to, computing and the amount of data you have is at the point where you can do that. This is the go-to now. So essentially Tesla is taking your data, and that is very valuable.
Should we have a claim to it or no? What do you think?
I think you should have a claim to it, but this is a really new part of any kind of law that hasn't really dealt with AI systems. Not sure if there's any existing case law about this. And if you think about it, also like insurance, right? Car insurance. It's a huge. And now there's a DOT case, a lawsuit against Tesla for a few of the crashes that happened on Autopilot. So they're like, well, who's responsible? Was it the driver? Was it the AI? And if it's AI, then should Tesla be responsible for what happened? We're in new uncharted waters for sure.
I mean, that's my biggest fear with auto driving, and I know Tesla has been navigating some of those questions, right? But I'm not familiar with the lawsuit. So this is the Department of Transportation.
Yes. So recent, like a month ago, there were a significant number, 10 or so, of crashes that they decided to file.
So you're in the car, you're on autopilot, which is only for the highway still, right?
I'm not aware of the details.
Okay.
I've never used it or looked
yeah.
into it.
Would you drive a Tesla on autopilot?
That's kind of like asking if you would sit in the car if your son is driving the car who's just learning to drive, right? So you're teaching him to drive, let's say, and would you be comfortable in the car? And maybe in the beginning, not so much, but over time, you get more and more comfortable. But, maybe in the beginning, do it in a parking lot, and then, yeah.
Right.
But I know some people who use it every day for every single thing, and they seem to be happy.
Would you do it?
I said, probably in a parking lot.
Yeah.
But if it really works and there are all kind of, legal protections for myself, then I would do it.
Yeah.
Because
but we don't have those legal protections yet.
We don't have any protections yet.
So if you got a Tesla tomorrow and you put it on autopilot, whether from home to work or from work to wherever, and boom, you hit something, Ashwin, you're responsible for this. And you're like, I just spent $80,000 on this Tesla, and it was supposed to be auto driving. And
Yeah.
would you turn it on, or you?
I would not turn it on. Just because, I mean, this is the sticking point, that there's not enough, the things surrounding the car haven't been figured out yet.
Right.
Okay, the car is not perfect. First of all, no AI system is perfect, just like no human is perfect. And so it definitely can get in a situation where it has to crash or will crash. So now the onus is on you sitting there waiting for the car to do something stupid and tell you, beep, 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 you need to take over. And if you are willing and able, you might save yourself.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I want to, that kind of a cliffhanger ride home from work. I want a peaceful ride.
Absolutely. I told you we lived in Ferris Thompson, and our neighbor, he was into self-driving, and he had some major breakthrough. He left Princeton because if he stayed at Princeton, they would have owned his breakthrough. So he was he left Princeton, kept his breakthrough, went into private business or whatever. I don't know how he's doing, but the concept is at some point, hopefully, these companies want us to believe that they'll get there at some point. I always said that I don't think it's a good idea, because as long as you have a 1962 Camaro and a 2023 Tesla, now I'm driving, doing my thing, and I have this Tesla next to me. The Tesla is still guessing, right? I think self-driving makes sense if everything is self-driving. So that way, I'm turning left. The other car can read that I'm turning left, and it's there's no guesswork. But you don't know what that Camaro is going to do.
Right.
And it's just, that's my thing. And I don't know where we're going or. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely spot on. There are some interesting ideas it's not just the cars, the roads, the traffic lights, everything needs to be smart, talk to each other. There is an idea that downtowns of busy metropolitan areas will be fully sort of this smart city. The idea is a smart city. I believe they're trying out some concepts like that in, I want to say downtown Menlo Park, somewhere in California. I'm not sure where. But the idea is you can't physically drive your regular car into the downtown. You would park somewhere, get into a smart car, and that would take care of all transportation needs within the downtown area.
Other than self-driving, what are the big applications for AI right now?
Oh, yeah, just everything, right? You have Google making your searches better. You have Instagram, Facebook recommending content to you. There are applications in military, tons of applications. That's primarily what I work on. So
military?
Yeah. Keeping our warfighters safe. There are things that we can detect that it's just a dangerous situation, right?
So that would be like enemy fire kind of thing?
Yeah, or something buried under the ground. And we don't want to, even risk going over there. And maybe that happened at night. None of the warfighters were actually looking at it when that happened. Someone came and buried something under the ground.
How does AI read that?
Satellite.
So is it like a vibration, or
it can be various things? Yeah, you can use any kind of. There's a lot of different ways of doing it. Infrared or other spectra.
Okay.
But actually keeping our fighters safe, our soldiers safe. Hopefully, it can also keep general public safe in some situations.
Yeah, for sure.
It's I know that TSA uses some AI, for example, to look through
Like it can recognize shapes and
Exactly. Like
yeah.
that looks funny, but sometimes people have funny things,
Right.
and that's okay. There's like a level of intelligence to it that, yeah. But then there could be really something dangerous, and you have to alarm. There's so many bags, so many people going through so many different airports every day
Exactly.
that no
Extra
human
set-
can actually do it.
AI is an extra set of eyes.
Exactly. It's a tool.
Yeah. So I know that, Google, Instagram, they use algorithms, right? So there's artificial intelligent algorithms, and that's reading patterns and creating recommendations based on patterns. And at this point, the system's moving so fast that a human mind can't keep up. Is that right?
That is correct.
Um,
The algorithm itself, there's a learning algorithm which says basically it dictates what kind of patterns the AI will pick up on, or what do you want the AI to do. That's how a human, like an engineer, tells the AI, this is your task. The algorithm usually is like just some code, like software. And then the part of that software is this thing that takes in data, figures out whatever patterns are relevant for what the engineer is asking it to do, and spit out good things like good Google results, or detecting pedestrians if it's a car, things like that. So there's still like a lot of human effort.
For sure.
An engineer has to make like this, a separate AI for detecting pedestrians, a separate AI for just looking at traffic signs.
It's still human created for sure.
And then you put it, wire it all together. We don't quite know how to do that yet.
You mean
the human part of it, that there's no like generic AI for all tasks that we can possibly think of. But there's like really good ones for specific things right now that are extremely good. So what happens is the human like basically wires them together in a way that does driving. But driving is, a lot of different things are happening at the
same time. You said you got off social media.
Yeah.
Why did you get off social media?
Mostly I wasn't using it to its potential. I was also concerned about privacy reasons. I was concerned about what they're doing with my data, just like what you're saying about Tesla. It was also a distraction, a time suck. It's not like I don't waste time, but I would like to, actively waste time doing something that I like doing, than sort of hypnotized by content being shown to me. But no, I honestly, I wasn't really using it, even while I was on this. It's a great thing, right? Social media is revolutionizing human society. You see all these like videos happening, like live, crimes being committed or people being total jerks in airplanes. You see everything live. It's like, we're good. This is the extra set of eyes. But yeah, I wasn't using it, so there's no point in me being there, being a leech.
What was the privacy concern part?
For one thing,
Facebook has had like lawsuits and all of these things.
Exactly.
It's crazy. So like,
exactly.
I know, but I mean, what part of it were you?
That's one of the big things. The Facebook lawsuits kind of pushed me over the delete my account edge. And if it happens with Facebook, I'm sure it will happen to other platforms eventually. The other concern was just, like you look at something, or you're actively sort of training this AI essentially that's going to tell you what you would like to see, and sometimes that's intrusive. you like the post on something, let's say something.
Let's take a brief break, okay?